so we will just cover what's left. We went over delegation, which obviously you know now is just a huge component of leadership. Today we're going to talk about time management, and I hope that you're finding not everything with this class and leadership in general, but do you find some of the content is almost like common sense material? Like if you look at it and you think about things from a common sense perspective, even as on exams go, a lot of times you can figure out what they're looking for just by using that. Now, some of it you have to know the content, leadership styles, that type of thing. But when you're looking at how do we respond to somebody, don't overthink it. Just kind of read it for what it is and then answer with your best gut feeling. And a lot of times it is incorporating a lot of common sense and what you already know. But it looks like everybody's doing really well, which I'm very proud of. All right, so a couple things. Well, we'll get into that afterwards. Let's go through chapter 9 first. Let me pull that up. Let me make sure all my other stuff is closed out. Give me just 2 seconds. So we're going to go over chapter 9, which is time management. And you all have had great practice in time management because you have almost made it through this program, and you couldn't have done it if you didn't have good time management. Some of you really needed to work on tweaking it as the year went on, but in nursing, time management is critical. And I will tell you, as a new nurse, a lot of times this is an area where you're going to struggle with in the beginning because it's new to you. So don't feel overwhelmed. And this probably, honestly, when you start practicum, you're going to feel a little overwhelmed with managing your time. Work with your preceptor. They can give you suggestions. They can give you tips. I used to be the faculty member for practicum, and a lot of the preceptors will kind of share with you ways that they manage, like when they get report, they have developed a format or a sheet that they use in order to map out the important information. And so see what your preceptor uses, talk with other nurses, because that's how we find what works for us. You take a little bit from different people and you design something that's going to work for you. But you have to have good time management skills because you have so much to do. And I know a 12-hour shift sounds like it's a long time, but you have so much to do and you only have 12 hours to do it. So you really want to be organized, and you have to use your time wisely, just like going through this program, right? You had so much to do, so much to study for. I mean, you're still in the midst of that and you only have so much time. So you really had to decide, what do I need to focus on? What can wait? So it's really just having those same skills continue to evolve. But one of the best ways is really talking with other nurses and seeing, well, what works for you? Now, not what works for one person may not work for you, but you can maybe adapt what they tell you until you find that sweet spot where it's like, this speaks to me, this is helping me manage my time. But when you don't manage your time well, it's very stressful. If you didn't map out enough time to study for all of the classes, which probably, if you think all the way back to first quarter, especially in the beginning, you probably felt a lot of that because you thought you were managing your time well, but then you got so caught up in one course or spent so much time there, you found out that these other tests were coming as well, but you hadn't divvied up your time appropriately. So when we don't manage our time well, it leads to a lot more stress than what is needed. Nursing is stressful in general. Quite honestly, life is, right? Especially over the past year, it's stressful. So if you develop these skills, that will help alleviate the stress that can be controlled. If you have poor time management, it makes everything 10 times worse. So think back to how you felt when you didn't manage your time and you didn't get to study the content well enough, how stressed you were going into those exams. It's going to be the same thing when you get in the workplace. So huge correlation there. And it's one of those things that's going to take constant reevaluation because you're going to implement something just like we did when, some of you have met with me for time management, for studying. make these changes and then see how it's going. If it's working well, keep doing it. If it's not, what else can you tweak? And that's going to be the same process as a nurse, but do know that it will be a little overwhelming in the beginning. You'll probably feel a lot of that at practicum. Talk to your preceptor. How can I manage my time? What would be a better way of, even going back to take and report? Is there a better way? Because I feel like I'm writing so much that I'm losing some of the content. And I think you'll learn a lot from your preceptor and the other nurses that work on the floor. So symptoms that will tell you that you're probably not managing your time as well as you could be would be that you feel like you're always rushing or you're in crisis mode. I know some of you have worked in restaurants before, and I've shared that I have worked in restaurants before, and it's that feeling, we always called it, of like being in the weeds, right? You feel like you're so overwhelmed, you've got all these different things to do, and you're running out of time to do it. Chances are, if you're feeling that way, some of it probably could have been prevented if you had managed your time just a little bit better. Missing deadlines. So for school, not getting finished with content before an exam, not getting papers and assignments turned in on time. But now we're talking about taking care of patients. We're missing, hopefully not, but you're missing medication administration timing because you didn't have good management skills in the beginning. And then, we are very busy in our work lives, and that will continue for your entire nursing career. You're going to be busy when you're at work. You have to make sure that you balance your work and your personal life, because otherwise you will find sometimes the work component is so overwhelming and demanding that you forget to take care of yourself. You forget to rest when your body is telling you we need rest. You forget that you still want to have personal relationships with your family and your friends. And some of you have really sacrificed a lot over the past year to get through a rigorous program. But when you start working, that's something you still have to continue to work on, because you will not be good at taking care of other people if you don't take care of yourself. And you guys know that I'm really big on that. You've got to do stuff that you enjoy. You may not be able to take as much time that you used to before you had that job or when you weren't in school, but you still have to keep aspects of your life that make you who you are and that bring you a sense of enjoyment. So remember that as you go into your nursing career, you need rest, you need self-care, and you're hearing a lot about that because so many people are suffering right now with everything that we've dealt with over the last year, that we haven't taken care of ourselves, and people are getting run down, they're getting stressed out. And then in nursing, it can really lead to what we call burnout. And that is something that you want to be mindful of from the very beginning, so that you develop good habits early on. And that way it will ensure that you're going to have a really long career, a happy career as a nurse, without being so overwhelmed and fatigued in the beginning. Let's see what else. 2 mistakes that are common is underestimating the importance of planning your day and not allowing enough time to plan it. So one of the things that they recommend is you have to take the time to get everything mapped out. And that little bit of time that you take to plan your day or plan your morning after you receive report will end up saving you time in the long run. When you don't take the 5 to 10 minutes to get everything lined up, you're going to be just running with like a chicken with your head cut off because you didn't organize your day. The other thing to keep in mind is pretty much, I would say, every day of my nursing career, I would have a game plan. Based off that day, I would have to look at how many surgeries I had scheduled, how many meetings I had, what the timing was of those. You get a game plan. I like to say it's a blueprint, because inevitably something is going to happen that was not planned, and you have to now rearrange your schedule. You have to reprioritize. And so that is something that is important, that you remain flexible in that. At the beginning of the day, you receive a report, you look at your patients, you're going to set up a game plan. 2 hours later, you have a patient that goes south, codes, and now everything is going to be shifted. So we really want to make sure that we at least start with that good blueprint, but then keep in mind that we're going to have to alter it as the day goes on. So allow time for planning, establish your priorities. You know, you've been hearing us tell you, what is the priority? You're going to do that every single day of your nursing career. It's just not going to be in exam form, but you're going to be doing that all day, every day that you work. I do it. Even though I'm not in patient care, I still have to prioritize. There are things that I cannot get to that day. There are things that are very urgent that I have to do first. And so you'll continue to keep modifying that. And it does get easier. So if you do feel a little overwhelmed at practicum or in the beginning, rest assured you're going to get better at it. Just like with everything we do in life, the more we do it, the more practice we get, the better we get. So it will become easier. You'll probably see a huge difference in your time management and your prioritization from the beginning of practicum just until the end. And that's only 144 hours. So in a short time, you're going to become much more skilled at it. I won't say you're going to be proficient, because you probably won't be, but you're going to be much more skilled and much more comfortable. Complete the highest priority tasks whenever possible. And the other recommendation is to finish one thing before moving on to the next. That way you don't have, what is the saying, like too many irons in the fire, because then you've got little bits and pieces going on. And some people don't work really well under those circumstances. So try to do your high priority items first. Try to do something, complete it, and you move on. I'm a list person. Part of that is because I have such a bad memory. If I don't write it down, it's likely to never get done. But there's also a sense of accomplishment for some people, not everybody. When you have a list and you get to make your cross through or make your check mark that you've completed it. So by the end of the day, it gives you that visual of all the things you had to do, everything you completed, and what's left that still needs to be completed. So, you know, that's just something that may work for you. And then reprioritizing. So you get your blueprint at the beginning of the day, and then depending upon what happens throughout your day, information that you may get notification from your manager about something, you may get an additional admit. Now things are going to shift around just a little bit. So you want to have like a working blueprint so that you don't feel like this is set in cement and I can't deviate from it. You can. It's just at 8 a.m. this was your best prioritization at that time. Things change, and now at 10 a.m. you just got to do a little bit of shifting. So one of the things in nursing is we have to be adaptable, and you're going to do that every day. But that's okay. You have your list, and you just make those. Maybe make your list in pencil instead of in pen. It is a critical skill in good time management to set your priorities. Otherwise, you'll end up spending time on things that could have waited, and you didn't get the very urgent things done. So you always want to make sure you do your priority setting to help you figure out what are the things I have to do today, what can I do later, and what are some of those things that I don't have to do. So they recommend you divide your tasks into 3 categories. And one of the categories is actually a don't do. So there are certain things that you aren't going to be able to do. And so you have to decide what's going to go in that category, what goes in the do later, and what goes in the do now. So if you have something pretty urgent, which category are you going to put it in?
Now. Do it now.
Do now. Those are my priorities. And then even within that category, there might be one that takes precedence over the others. So you put that at the top. So you focus on doing the now list first, then you hit the do later, and your don't do, that may get pushed off either to somebody else. It could be delegated. You may decide to do it a different day. It's not a necessity to be done today. So you can try that method of putting them into these 3 categories to really help you. And you can first list them there, and then maybe do a number 1 next to the thing that's the highest priority. You could number it, you can list it in order. We all do things differently. So you have to find the way that's going to speak to you the most and that's most workable, so that when something happens on your shift, it's easy to rearrange. A time efficient work environment. You always want to make sure you gather your supplies before you start something. I always said the more prepared I was, like before IV insertion, I always brought an extra catheter with me. It's nice to go in with the confidence that you're going to start the IV on the first stick, but when you're not prepared and you don't have a backup supply, that's when you're going to miss the vein. So always go in with everything that you're going to need, because if you go in and you get started, and let's say you're doing a sterile procedure and you forgot a very important component, now you have to break sterile, you have to take your gloves off. Now you got to replace the gloves you already used out of your kit, and now you've wasted time. Get everything you need. And I always say bring a backup of certain things so that if something happens, you're not having to waste the time to go and get it. And then I'm also a firm believer, when you have that extra catheter, you're going to get it on the first one. It's when you don't have it, you're probably going to miss it. So just be prepared. Group activities that are in the same location. Sometimes you're going to get patients who aren't all nicely grouped in the 3 rooms side by side. So that would be something else you want to look at. If you have one patient down at the end of the hall and you've got 2 over here, well, then maybe you can kind of group some of the interventions for these 2 patients while you're here, rather than going from the front of the hall all the way to the other end and then coming back again. I mean, chances are you're going to be running up and down the hall anyway, but you want to utilize your time so you're not spent just walking more than you really need to be. Estimate the amount of time it's going to take to do something. Always maybe tack on just a little bit longer so you leave yourself a little cushion and you don't get super bogged down if it does take longer than expected. Document your nursing interventions as soon as possible after you do them. And I'm sure you've heard this before. If you don't document it, what's the ending? If you don't chart it,
didn't happen.
Didn't happen. And we all have great intentions. So when we get super busy, you're going to be doing patient care, you're going to be doing interventions, and you don't document it, there is a high likelihood that you're going to forget to document something. It could be something minor that you forget. It could be something major. And I've told you guys I've had to testify in court, and the only thing I had was what I had documented, because I did not know from 5 years ago the exact circumstance. So you've got to document. So try to do it as soon as you are finished. It takes some time to do it, as long as you don't have a patient coding or something like that. You want to do it because it's going to be the most accurate documentation, and it really takes that element of forgetting to do it out of the way. And then always strive to end work at the time you're supposed to end. I had nurses work for me who had poor time management with their documentation. So at the end of their shift, which my nurses in recovery would arrive sometimes around 6:30 in the morning. And there were days we weren't discharging the last patient till 8:30 at night. That's a long day. And if you didn't document as you went and really kept good time management, I had nurses who would sit down after all the patients were discharged with a stack of charts that they had to go back through. And I had other nurses out the door because they had better time management skills. So now they're waiting around an extra 2 hours to finish their charting because they didn't get it done while the patient was there, because they weren't multitasking and really adhering to a schedule. So try to strive for that. You may notice in the beginning, these things take you longer. You're a new nurse. You're not used to the workflow. You're not used to the paperwork or the charting. That's okay. But as you get experience and you become more proficient, your shift ends at 7 p.m. Try to leave by 7 p.m., right? You don't want to be there longer than you need to be. So if you can really adjust how you're completing everything that you need to get done, that way you can get out on time. Makes everybody a little bit happier. And then you don't have your manager getting on to you too, because now your hours are going over. Remember, we've talked about labor hours being so expensive. They don't want you there for 2 to 3 hours to chart. But you don't want to be there for that long either. You want to go home, right? We all have our personal lives. Identify the key priorities that have to be accomplished that day. Key priorities. What are the things that I absolutely have to do today? And you want to make sure you list those out. determine the expected level of achievement of a prioritized task. So when I complete this, what am I looking at the end product being? Am I going to be completely done, or am I just going to be able to submit an email to my manager, whatever it might be? So you want to be realistic in what you can complete and what the goal is for that set of completion. And then assess the staff assigned to work with you. So we want to be able to utilize our team as good as we can. And as a nurse, you're delegating. And that is a big part of this. You can't expect that every single task you're going to be able to complete on your own. So you have to look at who's working with you that day or, that week, and where can you delegate some of these tasks that maybe you can get off of your list so that you can focus on those real priorities that really only you are going to be able to complete. Review short and long-term plans of the unit. Plan ahead for meetings. So if you become in a management position, you do have to look at what are the short-term goals for the unit. So maybe it's something that needs to be completed that week. And then what are the long-term plans? So over the next 90 days, are they looking at shifting to a different type of EHR, or are they looking at opening more beds on the unit? So you always want to make sure you're looking at what's important over the next few days, the week, and then what's important over the next few months, because that's going to help you to prioritize what needs to get done as well. Meetings should be planned ahead. It's very difficult to call a spur of the moment meeting because everybody has things going on. So you might have key players who need to attend that meeting, but they're already in a meeting somewhere, or they've already booked appointments that day, or whatever it is. So if you know that certain committees need to meet, try to get them planned ahead of time. That way it gets put on everybody's schedule and it ensures that people are going to be there. One of the worst things that happens for nurses is that they'll call staff meetings, but they call them at the last minute. So if you're not at work, chances are you have other things to do. It could be getting your hair done. It could be that your child has a doctor's appointment that you can't miss. So it's really hard when somebody says, hey, we're going to have a meeting tomorrow, and it's your day off. So as a manager, you want to take note of that and be respectful of everybody's time. Everybody's time is just as important as yours, no matter what position you're in. So we want to be able to make sure that people feel as though we're respecting their time and that they're going to be available for the meeting if it's important. Allow time to assess progress of the goals, and then take regular breaks. So when you're working on something, just like think about studying. Think about if you sat down to study for 8 hours and you didn't take regular breaks. You're not very productive. You can sit there with the book in front of your face, but you're probably not retaining information. You're probably not even comprehending what you're reading. So we do things in smaller increments. Most people handle that much better, and you're more productive in that. So whether you're studying for 45 minutes and then taking a 10-minute break, or you're working on a project and then taking a break, you still have to step away. You got to walk, you got to get fresh air, you got to, get the blood moving. So you do the same thing when you're in your work environment. Electronic calendars are huge. And I've told you guys about those being helpful, even for changing from one topic to another when you're studying. It's hard for us sometimes to stop what we're doing and move on to something else, or move on to a meeting because you're so engrossed in what's in front of you. We almost all have smart devices. Use those to make appointments, and it can be a private appointment. Nobody else is attached to it, but then your alarm goes off and you're much more likely to adhere to something if you have set as an appointment. Plus, when you have everything on your calendar, it's at a glance. It's easy to adjust when it's electronic. You can pull it up a lot of times from your computer, the same thing you see on your phone, and it can help to keep you on a schedule. I have to do that with all the, my meetings and everything else that I've got going on. Everything's on my calendar. If it's not on my calendar, it's probably not happening, probably because I won't remember. But that's what helps to keep me on schedule. So use that, even if it's something at work, and I'm not going to advocate for y'all to have your phones because that's often a big no-no, but making sure that you're, adhering to schedules when you need to be can be extremely helpful. As far as personal organization, so how do you waste time? And we all do it. A lot of times people end up scrolling social media when they should have been studying for a test, or you don't want to be doing something, you're procrastinating. So then you find 15 other things to do. Figure out what types of things you avoid. We all have them. There's always going to be aspects of our work that we don't love. And so we typically want to push those off until the last minute because we don't enjoy doing them. Or even if you brought it into, your school, there might be some subjects you like studying for, and then there's other ones that you're just like, really don't want to study this. It's probably not getting put at the top of your list. What time of day is the best for you? Some people are morning people. That's when they're most productive. They wake up, they're energized, and they want to get things done. Other people find after lunch is when they're most productive. So make it work for you. You are unique and you are different from everybody else. So utilize what makes you you to your advantage. So if there is something that can be done at a different time of day when you're most productive, then move it to that time. How long you can work before becoming unproductive. So there's some people who can sit down and work on a project for 2 hours straight and they're fine, and then they realize they need a break. There's other people who find after 30 to 45 minutes, they are losing interest. That's when they need a break. Again, you're very unique. So you figure out what is a good time limit for you, and then make sure you're scheduling those brief breaks, get fresh air, get the blood moving. Lists are planning tools and have to be flexible. So you get your blueprint, you get your list made, and then if something happens, then you're going to reprioritize, and you may find some of the stuff you thought needed to be done today could actually maybe be moved to tomorrow. Or you may have put on there this big task. We'll see if you can't break it into smaller pieces. Think about if you tell a patient, the doctor wants you to lose 80 pounds. And so over the next month or 2 months, that's your goal, is to lose 80 pounds. That's a really difficult goal to meet. If you tell somebody, the doctor would like you to lose some weight, we're going to aim for 1 to 2 pounds per week. Much more attainable. That you've heard, like, take small bites. Don't take big bites, take small bites. It's easier to consume. The same thing holds true. So sometimes you may have a big task or a project you're working on, but rather than just labeling it, I have to do this project, break it into smaller chunks so that when you accomplish it, you can make a check mark if you're a list person, or you can cross through it. That's been finished. It gives you a sense of accomplishment. You're making progress, and then you're more apt to stick to it. And then only put things on your list for that day that can reasonably be done in a day. If you put that you have 42 items to do by the end of your shift, that may not happen. So try to be realistic in that my prioritization for today, these are things that, along with patient care, managing duties, and whatever else you've got going on, that you could realistically complete. Be punctual. So when you arrive on time, that shows that you value other people's time. One way to really upset your coworkers is to arrive for your shift late, because the person who needs to give you a report was ready to go 2 hours ago. So if you don't come on time, that kind of gives them the impression that you're not really respectful of their time, and that isn't going to be taken very well. If you go for an interview, always make sure you're there even ahead of time, because that gives a bad impression as well. But really, any obligation where you need to be somewhere at a specific time, you always want to aim to be there a little bit before. And that does give the person, like, hey, this person respects my time, they value me, and they know that I've got things to do as well, and it is very, very much appreciated. The things that end up wasting our time, procrastinating. And I think we all probably suffer with this to some extent. I'm a procrastinator, especially when it's something I don't want to do. What I have learned, and I learned it in grad school big time, when I would procrastinate, it added so much stress on top of the stress that was already there from being in grad school and working full time. And it's a difficult habit, and it's a habit to break, because when you don't want to do something, it's really easy to just keep pushing it off, right? I would have a paper to write, and I would find 15 chores to do around the house, including cleaning toilets that I hate doing, just so I didn't have to write my paper. And then at the last minute, I'm, having to sit down for hours on end to make sure that I finished it in time. So be mindful of that. If you are a procrastinator, most of us know if we do this and if we do it frequently, and you want to try to make adjustments, because it is a habit and it can be improved upon. You just have to work at it. Not planning. So if you have poor planning, you're going to have poor outcomes. You're going to have stress. You're going to have crisis mode all of the time. Not establishing your goals and your objectives. So remember, taking those few minutes to really identify what are the goals, what is important, what is my day going to look like, is going to save you so much time. Remember, you probably don't, but in first quarter, I said every quarter, that first week, once you get all of your syllabi, map it out on a calendar so you know all of your due dates. I said it's going to take a couple hours to really write everything out or put it in your electronic calendar. But once you've done that, you will save so much time for the next 11 weeks. It's the same concept. Spend the time to get organized, and you end up saving time in the long run. If you don't delegate, you are going to find that you're running out of time to get things done. And that's an area that is going to take some work because you're not used to it. So you really want to know the aspects of delegation. You want to be comfortable with who you're delegating to. That includes planning, getting to know what they can do, what they're capable of, and then delegating. And it's hard to relinquish that because you are accountable for the outcome. But it's really important. You're not a super person, and you can't get everything done and done well if you don't utilize the resources that are available to you. There's also times where we have to say no. There are people who don't ever say no. They always say yes, and they get so overwhelmed and find that they don't complete their tasks. And that can end up being dangerous, especially in patient care. So there are times where you have to have the courage, and it is your right to be able to say no. You don't have to tell somebody yes all of the time. Being indecisive, waiting, kind of not making a decision right away, that's going to cause you to lose time as well. So you got to gather your data in the decision-making process and get through all of the steps so that you can then act. Because if you don't, and you just keep riding the fence for an extended period of time, you're going to lose precious time that you could have been acting. You could have been doing that nursing intervention, and that's going to put you into crisis mode. Open door policies are great as far as management goes. I always encourage that because I wanted my team to feel comfortable talking to me about things. But I will tell you, when you have an open door policy, it's very difficult to get your work done because at times it's just like a revolving door. So, they're good in that your team feels that they can communicate with you. But then there are times where you do need to be able to really focus on a task or a goal or a meeting, whatever it might be. Being interrupted by telephone calls. And some of these things are outside of our control all of the time, depending upon where you work and what your position is. Socializing too much. And sometimes it's because you're procrastinating. So you want to go chit chat with somebody, and then you find you've been talking for 20 minutes. And that was 20 minutes of precious time that is gone. Meetings, poor communication. We talked about that. You can miss really important information and end up losing a significant amount of time when you're not getting the right information to the right people. Incompetent coworkers. Unfortunately, this exists in almost every workplace. So when somebody isn't pulling their weight and doing their job the way that they should be doing it, it'll often cause more work for everybody else having to then pitch in and pick up their slack. So unfortunately, that ends up digging into your time, your prioritization that you've set, because now you're ending up having to do the job that somebody else was supposed to be accomplishing. So procrastinating, that just means putting something off until another time, when you could have just gotten it done and over with. It's not a character flaw. So this isn't like I procrastinate, there's nothing I can do about it, it's just who I am. That's not true. It is a behavior, and it is a behavior that can be changed. So the first step is identifying that you're a procrastinator. So I want you to think about it for a second and be honest. You don't have to answer me, but I want you to be honest with yourself. Are you guilty of being a procrastinator? And if you are, that's okay. It just gives you something that you need to work on, because it's causing you stress. It's causing you to lose valuable time, and you don't want to carry that into your nursing career. So you got to make some changes. Some of the projects aren't accomplished because they're not broken down into those manageable tasks. A lot of times when you're going to be ahead of a project, or you're put on a team to complete a project, it looks really daunting. It goes back to having this gigantic goal, very hard to achieve. If we break it up into different elements, much more manageable. And then you get that reward of, I've completed this first step. And so now it only leaves me with these 3 goals left. And so you get the accomplishment, you feel rewarded, and it gives you the encouragement to keep moving. So if you have something that is very detailed, it's going to take a long time, don't put it down as complete performance improvement project. There's a lot of different steps that go into doing that. Break it down into identifying the problem, investigate the circumstances surrounding the last 10 falls we've had. And so then you get complete each one of those. Personal time management. So that goes back to making sure that you have your short-term, your intermediate, and your long-term goals. And so that is going to help you with your time management. And you got to take the time to do it. It goes back to priority setting and planning. Time inventory. That is helping you determine how much time you spend on particular tasks that you do, and then figuring out what time of day you're most productive. Some people know, other people, they have to kind of map it out for a little bit and say, where am I losing so much time during my shift? And so you can get a schedule and you can kind of write everything down so you can see, wow, this really does take me a long time, or it takes me longer than I thought it did. And it gives you an area for improvement. But maybe you would be more, you'd be more productive. You know, some people are just super kind of slow in the mornings. They're not morning people. They just don't have that fire lit underneath them yet, but they do really well in the early afternoon. So maybe that's the time you need to work on your project, when you've got that gusto and you've got the energy to get it done. So then that will help you to shift it. Not everybody is aware of that. So you might have to do a little journal keeping, little time inventory, and really identify how long things take. And then if you can move them around so that it's being completed when you're going to be able to complete it your best. It's just like people who work out. People always say, I don't know if I should work out in the morning or at night. What's best for you? Some people are great in the morning. They wake up and they want to just push through a workout. Other people, it's just like dreadful and they have no energy, but they do much better at night. That's when you should do it. There's no set in stone which makes it right and wrong. You do it when it's going to be best for you, when you're the strongest and you're going to have your best performance. Take the same thing you do in these personal parts of your life and bring them into your career. And you got to take regularly scheduled breaks. It's just as important as all of the care you're providing for your patients. That doesn't mean taking a break off the floor. It means you need to be able to have these breaks where you refresh physically and you refresh mentally. That's why at most jobs you get time off, because everybody needs those periods where you step away, you get to take a break, you get to just relax, do something you enjoy, and it refreshes you. And then when your cup is full, now you're able to take care of patients the best that you can. If you go 3 years and you've never taken a break or any time off, you're going to be run down. And that's going to start to show. Patients are going to know when you're run down, because your demeanor, everything is going to change just a little bit. So just remember to take care of you. Breaks and rest are just as important as all the tasks that we do. The last thing, any questions on any of that? All right, so this is our last class together. We are going to meet again during week 10 just to do the practice assessment B. It's not mandatory. It'll be available if you're free and you're not at practicum. I wanted to talk to you about those dates too. So this is our last lecture, official lecture. So that does not mean the class is over, and it is not. This is a class that isn't super difficult. Like I said, a lot of information is kind of common sense. You're applying information that you've learned really the whole program, but just in a little bit of a different way. But the class won't be over. So starting with your planning and your prioritization, you have to remember that you have assignments, including weekly reading and your discussion posts. So you've got to map that in to all the things that you're doing over the week while you're busy at practicum, that you're still completing the assignments for this course. I have seen students end up failing fourth quarter because they failed leadership, and that should not be the case. So stay on top of it. And I know some people, you guys are getting towards the end, you're getting tired, you've been taking a bunch of tests. This isn't the time to get lazy, to get lax. You got to pick it back up. You're entering practicum, which is going to be super exciting. I think all of you are going to enjoy that experience, but don't forget your coursework. So next week is technically week 6. So there is no assignment next week because we should be holding today, next Wednesday. You would have had an exam and lecture. Starting in week 7, so weeks 7, 8, 9, and 10 is when you have your discussion posts. So you have 4 of them to complete. When they open between Sunday and Wednesday of that week, you have to post your initial post. So you're going to have like a scenario and a couple of questions. If there's 2 questions, you have to make sure in your post that you address both questions. Be thorough and be thoughtful. Some of these, you're going to be able to apply what you've seen at practicum, which is excellent. And they're very interesting to read because you're going to say, I've experienced this. Don't list people's names. Don't put patient names, no identifying information, but you can definitely share a story. And if it's something that relates to something you've seen at clinical or practicum, that's awesome. But be thoughtful, be thorough. 2, 3 sentences is not sufficient. I don't put a word requirement, but it needs to be a thorough response. And I can definitely tell when somebody didn't put any effort into it. The discussion questions are based off of that week's reading. So it's helping you dig into the information so that you can apply it and you can understand it. So between Sunday and Wednesday, that's when you're going to put your initial post. Then once you've posted, your other group members' posts will appear. And between Thursday and Sunday, you have to respond to at least 1 additional person. You can certainly respond to more, but the minimum is 1 additional person. That response needs to be a thoughtful response. So maybe they have said something and you're in agreement with that. Well, add to it. Why do you agree with what they said? Or maybe you can politely disagree and then back up why you're disagreeing with what they have said. So don't just say, hey, Amber, great job. I agree. Not sufficient. You need to provide some additional information. So 1 initial post and a minimum of 1 cross post every week for weeks 7 through 10. So this is just an example where it gives you a scenario. And then in this circumstance, you would have 2 questions. Well, they're questions, or it's just saying like that first one says, describe other ideas that may help to solve this issue. So then you list those and then you answer the second component as well. But it will relate to that week's content. Any questions about these threaded discussions? They're not available to you yet. They will be released it's like the evening before they become available, that you should post, and you'll just see that week's and you'll work on it that week. You're going to be put into groups, so you're not having to look at 31 other posts. You'll just have, I don't know, maybe 6 people in your group. So then you read theirs and you respond to your group members, and that's all done. I'm having the computer arrange who's in groups, so it'll just be random. But any questions on these threaded discussion posts?
Is there a length requirement, or is it just as long as we answer the question?
Right. So I don't give you a length, and I know again that goes with, I'm giving you free rein there, but it needs to be thorough and it needs to be thoughtful and including the material. So most of the time to answer the posts, you're going to have to refer back to the book. I'm not looking, you don't have to cite something. If you get something from a source, like if you're taking something from your textbook, then of course, you want to give them credit for it. But most of the time, as you're answering these or responding to them, you're probably going to have to look in the book and just make sure you understand that material. Don't not read the chapter and only look in the book to answer these, because then when your final exam comes, you're going to be in a very bad position. You've got to stay on top of your reading. And if you read and then you do your discussion post, it's going to enhance what you've learned about it. So as long as it's thorough, it's thoughtful, you've included material, I don't have a word requirement. I have some people that will do several paragraphs, and I have other that can give me 2, 3, and it's got plenty of information. 2 to 3 sentences, not enough. So just make sure it's thorough and you'll be fine. These aren't difficult. What other questions do you have about the discussion posts? And so those are the last assignments, which are these. So 1 primary post, 1 discussion post, or cross post each week for 4 weeks. Your leadership ATI remediation is due next Wednesday, the 26th. And that's by 5 p.m. I know most of the time remediation's due at 10 a.m. I put 5 p.m. because there's no point in you having to rush to get there by 10. I think you do maybe have ATIs that week, so you're already on campus that day. That's why I did it on Wednesday, so that you can turn your binder in. There is a box outside of my office, and you'll just stick it in the box, and that's your practice remediation due date. Then what I was thinking, which is so your final is going to be during week 11, and that's on a Wednesday. Remember, it got moved to Wednesday. It's your ATI and then your final. So I was thinking we could do the team session where we as a group work through some of the practice assessment B for leadership. And I can really do it either Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday of that previous week. Now, at this point, nobody has their practicum schedule. So do you want to just pick one of those days and then try not to schedule yourself for practicum that day? If you have to, that's fine. I'll record it and you can look at it later, but it would be most beneficial if you can try to be there for it. You guys just don't know your schedules yet. So is there any preference Tuesday, Wednesday, or Thursday? We're looking at the 22nd, the 23rd, or the 24th. I don't know if you're going to be on campus for ATIs any of that time. This is week 10. If you have anything that week.
Probably the 22nd or the 24th. I know anybody that doesn't pass the comp predictor has to take the C on the 23rd.
Okay, that's what I needed to know. Thank you. So the 23rd would be you having to go in for the ATI, maybe. Okay, so either Tuesday or Thursday, right? Why don't we just plan on June 22nd, which is a Tuesday. And we can do it, you want to just do it when our class time is at 1 p.m. And if you're on shift that day and it was just a day you had to schedule practicum, it's okay. This is not mandatory. I just want to benefit the most students that I can that want to attend. So we're looking at Tuesday, June 22nd at 1 p.m. Anybody see a conflict with that? And let me look at my schedule real quick.
Dr. Simmons,
yes.
Can you confirm while you're doing that the day for the final leadership exam and the ATI final? I think you said it was moved to Wednesday.
Yeah, it was on Tuesday.
The 29th?
It was.
Okay.
But then they had to move it to the 30th.
Okay.
Because there's a different ATI on that Tuesday, so they had to use it for that. So yeah, I can do the 22nd. So we'll plan at 1 p.m. So hang on, let me pull it up so I get the timing right. It's the 30th. So our final, our ATI is Wednesday, June 30th. And I'm just getting the times. It's one day later than it was originally scheduled for, but that's the day our class is normally anyway. So your final exam, I'm sorry, your ATI is at 9 o'clock in the morning. And then your final exam will be at 12:30 that same day. So you'll have about an hour, hour and a half break in between. And then final exam at 12:30. Now I believe, and I don't know if you've received communication yet, they may utilize that day to help you sign up for NCLEX because you're on campus anyway. So they may have you, after the exam, go to a room with a computer because the ECPI pays for all of that. So I think the plan is for them to do it that day, but that communication and confirmation will come from Mr. Fontaine. So our final is Wednesday, June 30th. ATI is at 9 o'clock. Final exam is at 12:30. And if you forget, it's on Canvas under the course assignment. I updated that weekly course schedule, so it's accurate in there. And then go ahead.
Will you please post, could you weekly post slides for the chapters?
Oh yeah, they're still there. So you still get.
I tried to get I went in there and I didn't see anything. So is that recent that you put them in?
No, they should be there. Let me look.
I didn't
they
see
should all be-
downloadable slides. I clicked and nothing happened. And I was looking at it. Maybe I'm
Yeah,
wrong.
so with every chapter that you're going to be reading the next few weeks, there's still PowerPoints that go with it. And then what
Are they there?
I'm pulling it up. And then over the next few weeks as well, if I find any helpful videos like on delegation and all of that, I'll post them in our teams, just like I have been, so that you can be reviewing them as these weeks go on in preparation for the ATI and the final.
Thank you. That's very good.
So I'm looking. I see that they have the reading. Yeah, I'll get them posted. I'm not sure why they didn't post them, but I'll post weeks 7, 8,
Okay.
and 10. Yeah, I'll get them there.
Appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you for letting me know because I would have assumed that they put them there. But yes, there are PowerPoints for each week.
Question: if you haven't like went over our resumes, and then like I changed my format, it has like the same, like you can keep the grade for the other one, but if you hadn't like got to mine yet, could I send you my new like format of it for you to like critique or whatever?
So
Are you critiquing them or are you just like grading them?
I'm grading them,
Okay.
but I'll let you know if I see something that should be changed.
Okay.
So if it's like a formatting thing, you can either send it to me and I could try to look at it. Also, you've got Jessica.
Yeah, okay. I'll
So
probably
that she can make sure that it's, the format looks okay if you altered that, but I'll grade it off of the one that you've submitted.
right. Okay,
Yeah.
thank you.
Yeah, sure. And then just a reminder that something that I still have to get done, but if you've got an interview and you would like me to make sure that I have looked at it before you submit it for your application, then please just let me know, but it is on my schedule to try to get done next week. And then the last thing I think I have is
I hope I didn't miss anything on the letters of reference because I didn't see any Dropbox for it. Did you expect us to send you those lists?
it should have been attached with your resume. So it was on a separate page with the resume was your reference sheet.
I didn't do that. So should I just submit one to you?
Well, not now.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
resume, so I submitted just the resume and cover letter. That's all.
Yeah, in the assignment description, it stated that you had to have a reference page with at least 3 references. So when you apply for jobs, you don't necessarily need to send that reference page. They will ask for them. And so sometimes when you're applying in a portal, you're going to have to put their information in. You don't necessarily need to send an additional page. It was a requirement for the assignment, but you won't typically be sending those with your resume as you apply. they will be asking for them at some point. And some people put in their resume like available upon request. You don't even have to state that because that's a given. If they ask for them and you want a job there, you're going to have to supply however many references they ask for. But for the purposes of the assignment, you have to have a reference page.
But I do have a list, so I don't know.
So good, we'll keep that because you're going to need it for your job applications. You'll just probably be inputting the information as opposed to sending them a separate sheet of paper.
Okay, thank you.
So stay on top of your reading. Make sure you're doing your discussion questions. You can always reach out to me if you have questions. You know, I'm still here over the next 4 weeks as you guys are at practicum, and I'm still available to you if you have issues or questions about anything. We just don't have class per se. Then we will meet during week 10. I'm going to put it down for a meeting. I'll schedule it in our Teams course page. It'll be June 22nd at 1 p.m. And that's to do practice assessment B, just to get you ready for the final, which is the next Wednesday, and the ATI, which is the next Wednesday, June 30th. And then the proctored remediation remains the same, which is Tuesday, July 6th at 10 a.m. That is when your remediation will be due. If you finish it before then, turn it in before the holiday weekend. That's up to you. The last thing I would encourage you, and you heard me talk to you guys at senior seminar about it, make sure you're doing those targeted ATI Med-Surg assessments as you prepare for next Wednesday. I really, I wouldn't tell you to focus on something if I didn't think it would help. You all have been away from Med-Surg for a quarter and a half. So if you do the practice assessments, it's going to be a recall of information, and it's going to kind of get all those cobwebs off. And I think it will be a big benefit as you prepare for that ATI on Wednesday. Is it your first one or your second one that day? Because I think you have two.
I think she said it's first.
It's first. Okay, good.
And then followed by farm, I want to say she's, yeah.
Farm is after. Okay. Okay, good. So just work on those, work on doing them. And that's the best way to study right now, is to do practice questions rather than going back and trying to read PowerPoints and books and all of that. If you do need to read something, I would recommend reading the ATI chapters. They're very short, they're very condensed. And then as you prepare for your leadership ATI, you have an ATI book. And so make sure you are referring to that because it's going to have the information condensed. This is the important information that you need to know as it relates to leadership, because sometimes in the course and in the book, we go over stuff that you may not see on ATI. So that's how I would gear some of your studying for the ATI. And then of course you still have a final exam. So, but I think that's all I have. So do you have any questions for me? Any questions?
I do.
Okay.
I went to that FNA website to register,
Okay.
and somewhere down the line after you enter your information, it says about credentials. What credentials do we put in there?
We don't have any. What did? Because I have other students who have already applied for it. What did you guys put in?
I didn't put anything. I just did my regular profile, and then once I got certified, I just go back and update it.
Okay. So you left it blank? So once you get your license, you can go in and probably update it.
This one is highlighting it in red, so I'm not sure if it would let, yeah, it didn't go as far as saving it. I was just wondering if it would let me save it or not because it's in red.
Are you filling out the one that is for the student, that free membership, or are you on, because if you just go to the FNA website and you try to go under membership that way, it's probably taking you to the one that you have to pay for as a nurse.
Mm-hmm.
You want to use that link. I think I sent it or posted it, and that is the one for the Student Nurse Association to FNA, and it's free.
Yeah, this is a student nurse.
I would try to do it with leaving it blank and see if it will allow you to.
Okay.
Is it a drop-down menu?
Yep. Well, no, this one is not. It says license number, not visible in profile. That's in red.
Yeah, you don't
It
have,
never asked me for that when I did it.
Did you go on the link that Professor Simmons supplied, or you just went on the website?
I did the link that was in the chat.
Okay. I'll try it on the link then.
Yeah, are you sure? Because that you're probably not on the student one.
that's what I'm thinking.
Okay.
Because they would expect you not to have a license and all that just yet. So just double check that you're accessing it through the right way. Because if you just go to the FNA website, when you click on membership, there's like 2 options and they're both paying options. This should not cost you anything. So it definitely needs to be reflecting that you're in the Student Nurses Association and a free year in the FNA.
Okay.
So just double check that.
Thank you.
Sure, you're welcome. And let me know if it continues to give you a problem, but I had not heard that before. So any other questions? All right, well, it has definitely, I know class isn't technically done yet. We still have several weeks, but I won't be seeing you all. So definitely been a pleasure having you for the last 4 quarters. I am still here, so please feel free to reach out to me if you do need anything. Enjoy your practicum. No matter where you get placed, learn and do as much as you can. That is the purpose of your practicum, is to help you pass NCLEX. So you want to get to see and do as much as possible and just really enjoy it. Most students it ends up being a phenomenal experience. And I've had many students come back and tell me that they know they got at least 20 questions right on NCLEX because of practicum. They did it, they saw it, they remembered it, and they were able to answer the question. So if you utilize practicum for what it's meant for, which isn't necessarily to get you a job, it's to learn and do, you guys are going to do great. And so hopefully it'll be a really, really good experience for you. All right, so if I can go ahead and do attendance and then we are finished. I know it's Friday evening and everyone's ready to go.
Thank you, Dr. Wheeling. You are literally the best. You are the best professor.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I appreciate that. You guys really have been great. And it's been a challenging year. A lot of changes and just a challenging year in academia. So for you guys to have gone through nursing school through a pandemic, I hope you recognize what you've accomplished. And that really is something that a lot of people probably would not have been able to do. So you should be extremely proud of where you are. And I hope you're excited about what's coming, because you're entering, I think, the best career that exists with so many options for you. So it's exciting. It's really exciting. I'm going to start at the bottom this time. Tom.
Here.
Kiyomi.
Here.
Maggie.
Here.
Michael.
Here.
Ashley.
Here.
Logan.
Here.
Stacy. Stacy. Mira.
Here.
Kayla.
Here.
Amber.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Vivian.
Here.
Taylor.
Here.
Allison.
Here.
Grace.
Here.
Yvonne.
Here.
Andrew.
Here.
Melissa.
Here.
Stacy.
Here.
Emily.
Here.
Anne Marie.
Here.
Uma.
Here.
Kendrick.
Here.
Alexis.
Here.
Lee.
Here.
Thank you. Heather.
Here.
Amy. Amy.
Here.
Rebecca.
Here.
Steve,
I'm here.
Ada, I see you front and center there. Samantha
Here.
and Tommy.
I'm here.
All right. All right, you guys have a good evening, and please reach out if you need anything.
Thank
you.
Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank
Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Sorry, thank you.
Thanks, Uma.
Have a good night.
You too.